Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Pat.
I haven't seen you in 2 years.
I know.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. There's a pretty good crowd at the center.
Well, that's right. We're on Zoom, but there are other people in person. Yes.
Yes.
I hope we're going to be able to hear them.
And then, yeah.
Everyone seen? Thank you, everyone, for coming out. All right, and don't forget if anybody needs a refreshment, they're up there in front as well. So come on in, get a seat, and we'll get started in just a minute. Thanks. Okay, great. We're going to get started. So my name is Jean Delios. Thank you all for coming out today. I know it's not the greatest of spring days, but spring is on the horizon. We're really pleased to have this kind of a turnout today, and we will have a second one this evening. We're here to talk about the Reading Center today to think about what could be, not what isn't working, what could be better. We're talking about high level, what could be. And we want this vision for a senior/community center for Reading. So by vision, we mean to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. I took that out of the Oxford Dictionary. In other words, think big. So your ideas are very welcome. You might notice that there's a card on your chair, and that is your opportunity to make sure we hear you in case you prefer not to raise your hand during the Q&A portion, or if you just would rather us make sure we really hear the ideas that you have, because that's what this is really about. This is a listening session. And we're really interested in getting feedback and making this an opportunity. So I also wanted to welcome my colleagues and the rest of the team here today. My colleague Kevin Bowmiller, who's the Community Services Director. Some of you might know him out and about as the Veterans Officer. He wears lots of hats, and without him I would be sunk. And also Amy O'Brien, who is in the back, if she could wave. Amy is our Elder Human Services Administrator. also a key member of this team and helps us stay afloat. And joining us tonight or this afternoon, is the team from Umass, and I'll be introducing them in a minute. But they're to my left and to my right. And I also want to acknowledge the members from our boards. Oh, the town manager is here. That's Fidel Maltez. Hopefully you guys have all met him. He's been out and about, so hopefully everybody knows. And I think I see my other colleague, Matt Cornelis, in the back. So Matt's the Administrative Services Director and the Ombudsman. So if you have any complaints at all, you want to talk to Matt. Sorry, Matt. And we also have a few folks here from the Council on Aging, and I apologize in advance if I missed anyone, but I saw Joan Coco, John Parsons, and Nancy Zemlak. If I missed anyone, please raise your hand. The Council on Aging, oh, who do I get? I think I said John Parsons. Yeah, John Parsons, John Coco, and Nancy Zemlak, but anybody else, please let me know. Okay, and we also have a committee, the Reading Center for Active Living Committee, we call it RECALC. I don't know if there's anybody here from RECALC. Oh, yes, Ron Assini, who is our very capable note taker, and, oh, sorry, Nora Bucko, who I didn't recognize. So thank you all again for coming. This is really a great turnout. We're really appreciative. So to recap where we have been, for those of you who've been following this, you know, we've been paying close attention to our demographics. And as the population of residents age 60 plus in Reading continues to grow, it's vitally important that the services provided continually evolve to deliver in a facility that is safe, accessible, and meets the needs of the community. And that's what we've been studying for the past several years. We have made improvements, and I'm very proud of the improvements that we've made, and we've squeezed every inch of energy out of this building that we possibly can. But we know that we can do better, which is why we have embarked on this work. In the fall of 2021, the Select Board created a 7-member ad hoc committee, that's RECALC, and the members of the board, the 7-member board, were appointed in December, and staff and I have been meeting ever since. And RECALC's charge was to explore the current and future needs of the community and initiate planning for a potential new senior/community center that will focus on residents age 60 plus and possibly other members of the community. So RECALC is really focused on 2 main activities for collecting data: benchmarking neighboring communities with both senior age 60 plus and multi-generational centers. And the committee staff, Kevin and I, we've gone out, we're hitting about 21 centers in area communities, and we have a standardized form that we're collecting all the data and bringing it back to the committee. So that's really exciting. The second part of RECALC's mission is to gather input and feedback and help to create this vision. Once RECALC recommends the vision, the next steps will be to seek funding for a feasibility study. Now, feasibility study is where we get into the nuts and bolts of how many square feet, where is it going to be located, do we do something with this site, are we going to be on another site, is it multi-generational, is it just limited to seniors? All of those things will be fleshed out when we get to the feasibility study phase of the work. I'm calling this pre-feasibility idea sharing. So that is basically the path forward. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Caitlin Coyle. Dr. Coyle earned her doctorate in gerontology from Umass. She has extensive experience working as a research partner to community-based organizations. Her work informs planning, development, and improvement to the services and supports being provided to older adults and people with disabilities. And also with us is Sarah Somerville, and Sarah is a PhD candidate in gerontology at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. Her research interests include aging services and bridging the gaps between research, policy, and practice. Her dissertation will focus on senior centers in Massachusetts and how they are structured and how they function and how they differ. So this is the expertise that we have here tonight. Thank you again for coming, and please welcome me in, join me in welcoming Dr. Coyle.
Thank you, Jean. Can everybody hear me in the back? All right, if at any point I fade, someone let me know, okay? It's wonderful to be here. I appreciate Jean's giving you some context. I have a little bit of that in my presentation as well, to sort of reiterate some of the points that she made. But before we do that, I wanted to just tell you a little bit more about myself and the center that I run at Umass Boston. So the Gerontology Institute at Umass is actually the second oldest academic program in gerontology in the United States. 1 out of 4 people with a PhD in gerontology received that doctorate from Umass Boston. So it's really one of the founders of the study of gerontology and a real sort of, I think, asset to our state here in Massachusetts. So within the Institute, I run a center called the Center for Social and Demographic Research on Aging. And we do a number of things, but one of the large sort of avenues of our work is where we contract directly with cities and towns to help them gather information, engage their community, and prepare plans and reports for how they can rethink how they are organized and how they deliver services and supports to their residents. So we've been around since 2012, and since then we've worked with 70 cities and towns in Massachusetts, really across the state. This is a relatively old photo of where we've been. So this is work that we do a lot, and it really also, I think, want to mention that it drives home one of our, sort of pillars of our mission, which is service to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as one of the public state universities. So again, this is a little bit of a recap of Jean's comments, but I wanted to just sort of lay out sort of where you guys have been in Reading when it comes to thinking about the senior center. So legend has it that back in 1991, this building was opened as the Reading Senior Center. And then sometime in 2015, the Reading Senior Center changed its name to the Pleasant Street Center in hopes of sort of attracting a wider range of residents, moving away from some of the stigma that's associated with aging, which in our society people don't like to think about. And then in 2017, the town actually did engage my team to do a needs assessment specifically around this Pleasant Street Center space. And some of you may have very well been in this same room. And actually I was telling Jean and Kevin this morning that I was in my files, and that presentation was actually 5 years ago to this week. It was April 8th of 2017 that we were here previously. So that makes us look very linear and well organized. Exactly 5 years later, we are here following up on that work. So that was a series of activities that our team did here in the town of Reading, trying to outline both the needs of the community, but also how those needs relate to the space here at Pleasant Street, with the Pleasant Street Center. So as Jean mentioned, 2021, the town of Reading appointed the Recalc Committee, really with the mission of trying to move this work forward and get us to the place where we're talking about plans and we're talking about moving towards a feasibility study. So that's where we are today in 2022. Also, just another description for those who aren't familiar with Recalc. That is a board that was appointed by the town, works collaboratively with the Council on Aging, and their charge is really to explore the current and future needs of the community, initiate planning for a potential new senior or community center that will focus on residents age 60 plus and possibly other members of the community. So that's the group that's been appointed to really drive this effort. I'm not going to get too much into data today because the main event is to hear from you all, but this is, we actually have new estimates from the American Community Survey, which is a survey produced by the Census Bureau in between the years of the decennial census. And it's estimates, but it is based on annual survey data. And the most recent data, the 2020 estimates, actually came out in mid-March, so they're relatively new. And so I just wanted to give you a sense of the age distribution of your community based on those data. What you see is you've got 25% of your community, so a quarter of your community is under age 18 or otherwise sort of the school age population. What's a little bit interesting is that 26% of your community is actually age 60 or older. So when we think about, and then you've got, so that's another sort of quarter of your community that makes up what we consider in the US an older adult. relatively stable population size in Reading, which you probably know, but that's where we are. So really, we're talking about the whole community of Reading when we're here today, but I think it's important to think about that 60+ population, the folks that are served at Pleasant Street Center and Elder Services make up a very significant portion of the community and will continue to do so in the future. So I wanted to move towards talking about sort of how we're going to do this conversation that we're going to have this afternoon. So I have a series of questions, sort of prompts that I've prepared to kind of get us thinking about what we're trying to do here, which is really envision what a center for active living would look like in the town of Reading. We're going to move through those questions one by one. I'm going to open it up to the folks in the room and ask you to raise your hand, and we'll come to you with the microphone and you're able to pose your question and then or comment. And then we'll try to carve out a little bit of time for folks who are on the Zoom room, who are joining us virtually, to also have an opportunity to contribute for each of the questions. So we'll sort of go question by question, hear what's going on in the room, and then we'll go to the Zoom room and take questions from there. So please do raise your hand, and I will try to get to you in some fashion with this microphone. And if I can't get to you, you can tell me your question and I can repeat it for the group and the folks on Zoom, okay? So we'll just have to work together so I don't, fall in chairs and things like that. The other thing to note is that most of you should have seen a large colored note card on your chair. If you did not get one, I believe there's some on this table and possibly some over at the front desk. Those cards are in addition to the oral conversation that we're having that's being recorded and all of that for our information. You also have the opportunity, as we're having the conversation, if you have an idea, a question, a thought, something that you don't feel comfortable standing up and saying in front of everyone, please use that card to make those notes. Don't have to put your name on it. Don't have to tell us anything other than your comment or your question. And just leave that on your seat when you leave, and we'll collect that, and that will be part of sort of the data process. And then lastly, there is a sign-in sheet. If you did not sign it, just try to do that before you leave. It's helpful for us to know how many people were here, and also for the Pleasant Street Center to know how many people are here. So I just encourage you to do that before you leave. So with that, we're going to start to move into the forum portion of today's event. Does anybody have any questions about what I've covered so far? Okay. So this is, again, your opportunity. This is, as you mentioned, the Recall Committee is really committed to this community engagement process. This is one of several activities that will be going on related to this project, but this is one opportunity for the town to hear directly from you about Reading as a place to live, thinking about sort of what's already in place and what are your concerns, but also to contribute to the vision of a Reading Center for Active Living. So this is an opportunity for you all to tell us what's your experience and the experience of your friends and neighbors here in the community. So we're going to start with a couple of warm-up questions that are pretty broad, but I think are going to help us kind of get into the right frame of mind, which is, what are some of the things that make Reading a good place to live? So when you think about living in Reading, what are some of the things that you value about living here? Yes?
This one go first.
I can repeat it.
Well, it's fine. People, very close-knit community. I grew up in Melrose, fifth generation of my neighborhood, moved to Reading 15 years ago. I work for the state, I work for the county. Young families, school systems, that kind of stuff. Every time I go downtown, there's always something new and fresh being done. Like Easter egg hunts coming up. Rain, no matter what the weather is. So my thing is, place to grow, community knit, kind of place. Schools, recreation, like the rec department is phenomenal.
Yep. So it's a tight-knit community. There's things going on. The rec department, the other sort of programs and services offered by the community. People know each other. It's a friendly family.
One of the better things I did here was that it's not just going to be a senior center, but maybe a community center. And that's basically what I'm here for. One of 15 people. We all moved from Melrose to here, and there's 15 of us, and 6 of them are children. So I mean, so it would be nice that it's going to be a center for all.
Yep.
The library, I was anti that huge amount of money that was spent for the library, but it's a good asset.
Yeah.
And it's nice to use.
Yep. So thinking about the Reading Center for Active Living as another one of these community assets where people can come together as a community for different programs and services. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I got you.
accessibility of Reading. It drew a lot of people from surrounding towns here. Everything is accessible, and that's what we tout. I mean, we have a wonderful downtown. I know we're working on the parking problem. The schools are excellent. It's so easy to get off to the highways, whatever. What we like is more people, you know, coming and staying and using the facilities that we have here in town. But that's a wonderful, you can get to New Hampshire, Boston, location is premier. So
Yep, so the
we
location,
have a lot to work with here.
yes, I appreciate that. So the location both to proximity to other communities in Massachusetts, but also to the highway, to, you know, New Hampshire, things like that. You've got a good location.
And to just add what that gentleman said, I've been here for over 50 years.
Mm.
I grew up in Lynn. And the school system, I've had my children go through, everything. My daughter moved back here from moving all around the country with an Air Force pilot. She came back here, and what she wanted when she was moving back are sidewalks, a central downtown, good schools, and accessibility. She looked around, she said the only place that fits the bill is Reading.
Yep,
she
so that
chose
accessibility
Reading.
to schools, the quality of the schools, absolutely. Great, thank you.
This was just a little bit of an addendum to that gentleman, and that is that, you know, some of the, as you think about a center, you want places for many activities. And I think it's important, when you go about this, to look at the library, because they have so many spaces as well. And so you want to offer some things that you maybe aren't allowed to get there, or spaces that you don't have.
Making sure that it's complementary to the other assets that are in the community. I think that's important. Thank you. Other thoughts about what makes Reading a good place to live? All right. So we're gonna move on to talking a little bit about what makes it challenging to live in Reading and sort of what are some of the, when we think about this work, one of the goals is to kind of identify some of the needs of the community to ensure that a future center has the ability to address those needs. And so one of the ways we talk about what are the needs of the community are to think about sort of what are the challenges that people face living in Reading. Yes.
Pure and simple, taxes.
Taxes. Yep, cost.
We don't think that.
Specific.
And only one person here.
So missed opportunities for getting additional tax, so maybe like commercial types. Yes.
They have a quorum.
All right, so the issue is the cost related to taxes, and also you're identifying sort of missed opportunities for bringing in additional taxes. And I saw several nods with that comment, so I'm getting some sense that people agree. Yes?
I'd say not having kids in the community and coming in at a point in life, it is hard. As many activities as there are, a lot of them do focus around having school-age children and connecting in that way. So when someone's coming and living here in their 50s and they don't have kids, period, you know, never mind not in the school system or whatever, any place, it is difficult to find your niche of connecting. So sort of the active 50 to 60 plus people, and there are a lot of building going on, trying to attract those people.
Right.
So that I have found challenging.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So thinking about people without kids in the schools, or frankly without kids at all, who are maybe coming to Reading because of its accessibility and its proximity to other places, maybe coming to some of these new developed housing units. And really thinking about, it can sometimes be hard for those folks to sort of integrate into the community, meet new people, get involved, even though there's a lot of things going on, there's sort of that barrier to entry. I think that's important, sort of the newcomer welcoming. Yes?
15 years ago, we didn't have a problem finding a parking space downtown. You go behind CVS and get a parking space. Now you go into CVS, there's 3 people in CVS and every parking space is taken.
Yep.
And you know, I come out, sometimes I have to park at the senior center just to run over to CVS and come back.
So parking in the downtown area makes it very
It's
difficult.
brutal, even on Haven Street now, you cannot get a parking space to go into the bank or the post office.
Yeah.
So they put all these condos in, and all the condo people get all the parking spaces, and the residents that have homes can't come downtown.
Right, parking.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Exactly.
Exactly, we've got an agreement up here. So what about affordable housing? Tell me more.
We have a lot more apartments being built and
Yes.
condos and whatever.
in order to get loans, you have to have a certain percentage, et cetera. So there's this and this.
I see.
So kind of the middle of the road affordable housing for, it's
Housing alternatives.
1,000 a month or having to have to be eligible.
Right, sort of that middle income kinds of housing, and it's the availability of that housing.
Our kids can't afford to stay in Reading to buy a house once they graduate college, because after paying college, but our kids cannot afford to buy in Reading.
Yep, and I'm hearing some agreement over here. Yeah, so it's that the cost of housing, so in
Yeah.
addition to the lack of some of that middle income housing that this woman was talking about, you're talking about especially barrier to young families being able to come into Reading.
And it's nice for when we go to,
Nice place to live.
yes, and it's great for us when we go to sell, however, we're probably not gonna sell for.
Right, and one of the implications of that, I can imagine, is that people's families aren't able to live in town, so
Exactly.
therefore people have families that are a little bit further away, which has some, yes, absolutely. 1 second, and I know we have to talk to folks on Zoom.
So I just, we have a technical housekeeping item that we want to do. First of all, I forgot to mention that Jenna Fiorenti is here from the rec. She's the recreation administrator, and I just see a select person that I also forgot, Karen Herrick, so apologize for that. And we need recap to call themselves to order. So I am going to defer to the wonders of technology and hope that it works.
John Sasso.
John Sasso, please call yourselves to order.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we have a quorum of recalc committee members on the line. Myself and Mark Doxler, and I believe in the room is John Parsons and Nora, I apologize, Nora Kelly.
Nora Rindo. And Ronasini.
And Ronasini. Okay, so we actually have 5 members, so we are definitely above a quorum. So I'd like to call the recalc committee meeting to order. Just do attendance, as we said. Is there anything else special I need to do here other than just get us all to agree?
They're all set.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the recall committee for recognizing that everyone was here. Is there any questions or comments from the Zoom folks that we should?
There are none in the chat, but there's one hand raised.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and,
That might be Kevin.
Kevin, do you want to call on the person with the hand raised?
I think Jean, you raised your hand.
Hi, yes, I did. This is Jean Prado, and I have a couple of comments I'd like to make. I think it's awesome that we're considering enlarging the senior center. And I do think as far as the cultural connection, very important. I almost could see both of these units in the same building, but operating separately. And if large establishment is needed, one can oversee from the other. I just hope going forward, after having been in Reading for 50 years, that whoever is on this committee or deciding on design and location, that they positively, with good thoughts, think of future growth. It's like when we do something in the town over the past 20 years, it's wonderful to see the growth, but like with the parking issues, there isn't future thoughts giving into a lot of this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jean. So when we're thinking about planning for this Reading Center for Active Living, we also have to think about what that's going to mean, what the implications are that are for the community as a whole related to parking and a number of other sort of consequences of that. So thank you, Jean.
Well, you're welcome.
It's so exciting to have a hybrid meeting. I'm feeling very skilled, even though I have nothing to do with it. So back to wrapping up sort of this topic of sort of what are some of the other challenges. We've heard about costs, we've heard about housing, we've heard about lack of housing, sort of the cost of housing, parking, other challenges. Yes.
Thank you. I was wondering, asking anybody in the room, even by a show of hands, we've had the same van model for many years. There are opportunities now at the state to potentially get grants for more van funding, and I'm thinking this relationship to the parking issues getting here. How many people would be open to bigger van, better transportation in and around the downtown.
So that, okay, so just for folks who maybe couldn't hear, that was, the question was whether you'd be interested or willing to ride, transportation, either larger vans or, in-depth sort of local transportation systems in Reading, and, so we could have a show of hands of people who'd be interested in that.
The problem with vans is that they have certain
Yeah, the problem with vans is they have certain routes and times, so there are some limits to that, certainly, but I think, as we're talking about people getting in and around, the downtown business area, that's a good point. Thank you. Yes,
Seniors need increased transportation availability, but only around town, but to and from doctors, dentists, whatever appointments they have.
so in, transportation to medical appointments as well as, around town. And beyond, what kinds of transportation are you thinking of? Just sort of a bus or?
Van, anything that would pick them up at home, take them where they wanna go, and come pick them up.
Sort of that door-to-door kinds of service, so picking you up at home, taking you where you need to go, and then returning you back to your home. So I think that's kind of a specific, I mean, I just follow up because I think it's important to think about, there's so much in transportation, it's a big topic. Thank you for that. Yes.
The lack of sidewalks in a lot of places in Reading, that if you ever find yourself needing a wheelchair or using a walker, even if it's not
Yeah.
permanent after an operation.
Yeah.
You often feel very unsafe.
Yeah.
Going out.
Yeah.
And just trying to get around.
Yeah.
In the town.
Yeah, so there are places in town where those sidewalks are not, they don't exist. And so for folks who have mobility challenges, maybe need a wheelchair or frankly just aren't real confident on their feet, those that can be very difficult for people to get around. Yes.
Just to add to the transportation issue for medical
Mhm.
employees, I'd like to see the geography extended to Boston.
So the geography of the current medical appointment transportation extended to Boston, that's something you'd like to see. Great, thank you. So somebody up here that had a hand up. All right. So we're gonna move into sort of the fun part of the conversation, hopefully, which is really to kind of think big and think creatively about what a center for active living would look like, what would happen there, who would go there, those kinds of questions, sort of getting people's ideas about a Reading Center for Active Living. Before we do that, I wanted to just ask one other kind of question, a little off script, which is sort of where else, besides the Pleasant Street Center, I've heard about the library, where are the other places in Reading that people gather?
Last corner.
Say that again? Is that a bar?
The last corner, it's a little
Sandwich shop.
A restaurant, okay.
by the train station.
By the train station,
Yeah.
a restaurant, okay.
And they're gonna have to close, I think, unfortunately, because their
gonna be a
building is
high
being
rise.
bought out to be yeah, that's sad.
Okay, so a
Then
local
you have
restaurant
another
that's maybe
high
not
rise.
gonna stick around because of real estate.
Yeah,
development.
yeah, and then Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, okay. Other places?
The Reading High School has a beautiful performance center,
Mm.
and that's used for different
Events.
functions, and maybe that could be tapped into more. Because it has a separate entrance to the high school, and it's a beautiful facility.
So the high school auditorium is a place where people go for events and things, performance center, thank you, yep.
Reading Community TV.
Reading Community TV is another, it's not a physical, is it, what is a physical location? Yep, and also the way that they broadcast
Here,
theater in the back of the Reading Community TV.
the old theater.
Yeah, it's nice.
I'm using it.
Very nice.
It's available for the town to use, you have to coordinate.
So it's a space where people can gather, have meetings, events, things like that, at Reading Community Television, great. Other places that people go, get together? Yes,
A question is, there's someone on the floor with a microphone that can go over to some of these individuals to let them talk? Because it comes through better on the speaker.
sure, I can do my,
In other words, this lady just said, we can't hear you.
oh, well, yeah, sure. I'm doing my best to try to repeat questions from people, but I can do.
But you don't have someone else with a microphone?
I don't.
We have one
We
microphone.
have one microphone, so, yes.
Put that on our list.
Local group called the Reading Neighbors
Leaders Network, who have been functioning since 2016 or 2017. And we have about 100 members that gather together.
Yes, so the Reading Neighbors Network, which is a resident grassroots or resident organized network of people who provide various services, have lots of events. There's about 100 members. I'm hearing, so that's another, again, maybe not a sole physical place, but certainly a place for people to gather. Folks over here?
Are you on Facebook too?
All right, well, with that, we're gonna move, I just wanted to sort of get a little bit of an assessment of sort of how else people spend their time within Reading, so thank you for that. So moving on to sort of thinking about the Reading Center for Active Living, I wanted to start by thinking about, okay, so we are working towards this Reading Center for Active Living. We've talked about the needs of seniors, young people, kids. Who do we think will go to the Reading Center for Active Living then once it's developed?
I'll go.
You'll go, okay. Yes?
I actually think that the majority of people that would go to one would be seniors because kids have their sports.
Yes.
They go to the movies, they gather together, they go to a friend's house. Seniors tend to be a little bit more isolated because they don't have friends in class and they don't do play dates and they don't play sports.
Right.
So
We can't go to the bars like.
I go out with some of us, not all of us want to.
Right.
I love the idea of a multi-generational facility. I can only speak for seniors, but having recently retired, I find that there really isn't much to do.
Yeah.
And you only have this, so that if you had rooms, for lack of better terms.
Sure.
Where you could go from one room to another room and have more activities, I think that would be great.
I think that's a great point that you're making about, so the comment was that probably the majority of people who would go to the Center for Active Living would be seniors, and part of that is because they don't have that sort of built-in structure of a school system or a PTO or something that does sort of facilitate some of that social connection. And for people who are retiring in Reading, having a place for them to engage with each other and with the community is desirable. Thank you for that. Somebody over here.
I was just gonna suggest that maybe the people who have questions will stand up.
Okay.
And we'll be able to hear.
Okay. Did you have? No question? Just want people to stand up? Okay. If you're able, if you have a hand up, if you could stand up, maybe that would help us here. And again, I'll try to repeat people's questions.
I do know that they run a SHINE program out here, and so people who are transitioning or approaching, a time when they may be retired, and using it not only for information, but just to begin to get involved and possibly they don't know very much about it.
Yep. So the SHINE program, for folks who don't know, is a volunteer-run program that helps people understand getting into the Medicare system and the process of all of that and choosing coverage. And that can be, as this woman described, a place for people to sort of enter in and figure out what else is going on at the senior center. It is a nice example of a program that's important. Yes.
We have a group, there's a bunch of women here that we come to the dance classes here. This whole room is filled, so there must be at least 30 women. And we're doing Zumba, and on Wednesdays, we're doing line dancing. So there's a group of women that like to say very active. We open the doors, because it's so hot in this room.
Yes.
The door's wide open and we're still sweating, but there is a younger group of seniors that want the high intensity activity, and Zumba is very popular here.
Yes,
You know?
so you guys would be at the Center for Active Living dancing.
Yes.
And so people who want that sort of high intensity activity, that physical activity, those are the kinds of folks who would be at a Center for Active Living, yes.
One of the things that I have found missing is a place to just go, just to drop in. Like a group of people that just want to get together to chat or have a meeting. And here, if you're not in a program, you're standing in the hall. If you go to the library, which is the next place, everyone wants quiet. You want 6 people around the table having a conversation with people who want to read. So we use space, just free space, as well as function.
Yep, so some drop-in space, sort of just nice space to gather to just, I apologize for that. Thank you. Yes, hi. Hi. Thank you for receiving the
I've noticed that, when I'm up here, it's mostly women that are here. I think we need something to attract men. Just because I'm a senior, you know, something like more social, like dances or, a night of supper, so that even couples could come, but singles could come. And, you know, I don't find anything in town that, you know, churches do that, but not so much.
Yeah.
So the senior center needs to be more social for men and women. That's it.
Yeah, so the point about sort of that social programming, I think, is really important, and for people to get to know each other and mingle. Yes.
We have the area downstairs with a pool table. Men did come to use the pool table, but we've had flooding down there. We have mold, we have poor ventilation, so it's not being used anymore. So maybe an area with a pool table and darts and different games that people can use.
Yep, so the billiards programming, trying to bring in some of the men, yes.
Hi, I come here two times a week.
Some guys come here and play cards.
And I moved to Reading 7 years ago and close to my daughter's school. And there wasn't a whole lot going on other than the library. And it was like, I like it. You're connected to everybody, you meet all different people. There's different programs going on, but it's way too long. You need a much bigger.
Thank you, yes. So space for that, again, sort of the dancing and the place for people to come and connect with one another.
Actually, I don't need that, trust me. Trust me, I need it. One of the things that other senior centers do, because some of us travel, we'd like to see maybe some classes, whether it be a cooking class or a language class or something that's not only physical, but intellectual, which I mean, I think a lot of times seniors are associated with not using our brain. We have one, trust me. But I would personally love to see some classes.
For lifelong learning.
And it's also kind of hard when we don't know what kind of a space you're talking about. Are you talking about a huge amount of space? I mean, some of the suggestions we make, it may not be realistic for the kind of space.
Well, today, they are realistic.
Oh, okay, perfect.
A lot of those decisions about.
I mean, seriously, I mean, I would love to see a pool in there.
A pool, oh, yeah. No, today's about ideas.
Do water aerobics and.
Water aerobics,
I mean,
yes.
a lot of us want to be active. When I moved here 15 years ago, there's no information set out at all, not in newspapers. I found out about the senior center through somebody else who comes from the senior center.
Okay.
So how do we find out about these activities unless, you know, it's not in the newspaper?
Right. So one of the keys I think you're talking about is this idea of information.
No information. I mean, I can sign up my kid when I don't want for baseball, but I can know about the senior center.
Yes, hugely important.
Hello.
I think there was a comment from the Zoom earlier about this idea of thinking about what, you know, the growth and the capacity that is going to have to come along with this. And I think, yes, communication is huge.
Lifetime, please.
Getting back to that, if somebody wants to learn a language, then we have a senior center with an adjunct or community center for younger people. Maybe the younger kids can come in and mentor a language.
Great, so the value of that sort of community center model or having like multi-generations is to be able to sort of think of intergenerational ways for people to work together to, you know, do the lifelong learning pieces that you were talking about. Great, thank you. Sierra, somebody on the Zoom, and let me.
Yes. So we have, wait.
Yeah, thanks.
We have a comment in the chat that I'll share with the room, and then we have a hand raised. So the comment in the chat is from Mary Ann. Thank you. This is not for the warm-up, but is a general purpose question about what need we are fulfilling. What is the age range of people in other communities who end up using their senior centers the great majority of the time? Is there a big demand in our community for those in the 60 to 70 age range for senior center type activities, or maybe older ranges? It feels like the needs of those in the late 70s and older may be different than what, quote, younger seniors age 60 to 70 may want. Older folks might want more services and transport, trips, etc., versus exercise classes and thoughts. So that's one comment that was provided in the chat, and then we have a hand raised too.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, it's Jean again.
Hi, Jean.
Hi, I think all the comments were fabulous, and those are all needed within our community. But I think one of the first steps we really need to do is decide location, funding for this building, size of it, design, and how we go about it. And then all our comments form committees to then pursue all of these activities. But someone mentioned about classes, which I think is very important. And I do think when you're a senior at 60, 55 and up, whatever, I think we're all a community and we all need different activities. And this is why our new site, hopefully, is very important. But just as an FYI, Tufts University has a great senior program. And they have, you pay a minimal fee, but prior to the pandemic, they were going to be at Stoneham, so people would not have to take classes and ride into Medford. So that's something maybe our community could think of now, why all of these discussions and buildings are being prepared to coordinate with the library and our senior center to think about that.
Right.
And offer this to our seniors.
Thank you,
But
Jean.
my thing is definitely future growth in mind. And I just hope this is not something that we're discussing now, and then in 10 years, it's done.
Yes. You have lots of support in the room, Jean. Lots of support.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think that's a really important, I'm just gonna, I know you had your hand up too, to kind of tie Jean's comment with some of the comments we heard in the back around and from the Zoom. You know, I think it is important to recognize that if we're talking about a community center, it is a lot of different needs are going to have to be met through one space. And so I think when we're talking about a center for active living, we're thinking about a space that can be sort of adaptable, universal enough that there is an opportunity to sort of either partner with existing programs and provide transportation to those things, provide them on site for young folks, for older folks, you know, so I think we're going to have to think about, it is a tall order, but I think it can be done. It's just, I think it is important to recognize that there's going to need to be some coordination involved.
But the question is, who will go there? I think what we're really talking about is who. Why go there, and what are the motivations? What will get people there? And I think there's some great points being brought up. We're identifying some of the things that will attract people. But, you know, if you build it, they will come. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that we will keep in mind. I mean, there seems to be a lot of interest in this room. But I think it is multi-generational, and so really taking advantage of that reality.
Thank you.
Hello there. Keep in mind, anything happens, it already takes 10 to 15 years to get done from the time it's planned. Take that from
It took me 5
experience.
years to get back here, so I think.
Well, just for your FYI, if it wasn't for me putting an article in the town warrant to sell this building, you wouldn't have it. Hi. I want to talk something different. I am a member from last week 2017 here. It is very important funds, locations, and some other things for the business. But there is not even a single program, even if a second minute, from 2017 I am watching, are those very people who entered in this honorable country as a senior citizen. Not even a single program for in any of the senior centers throughout the city.
those people who entered here as a senior citizen, due to the green card citizenship on the basis of their children or something like this. They need some special guidance. They don't know the culture of this country. They want to develop this country. They want to permanently live there. They want to sell all the properties in their own country, but they need some guidance. There is not always any program of single minute. So I know 7 such families in this area who don't want to come here because there is no program for those very people. So my request is there must be some program within a week, within a month, within a year for those very people who entered here as a senior citizen, want to develop, want to do whatever. And they also a citizen of the country, they also need the same, I think, treatment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I used to work with security, so I have a different point of view. I was born in 41 Swansea. But behind us, the people for the baby boomers from World War II is going to be a silver tsunami, which is in it now and is taking a lot of money out of Social Security and other things like that. But after that, there's a real problem, and they have it in China, they have it in the United States, they have it in almost every country, where there are seniors who have no one to care for them because, and let me give you an example. My mother was one of 6, my father was one of 8. There were 5 in my family. From those, I'm married, I have 3 kids. My sister has 1. So the young people who are going to bear the burden of the cost of all these things, plus everything else, the financing of it is going to be a big deal. It's going to, so we do need to have seniors have a place to go and something to do. But there might also be a chance for it to include things like part-time work for people who need to come in and work in the community and stuff like that. So when you're thinking about it, you should also think about how we're going to hire good people to be there. The senior center has great people, has had for a long time. And when I go around and I do the tax aid, I see some seniors living on Social Security that's under $12,000 a year. So if you're going to have something here with classes, we're going to have to also work on our senior representatives and the people in Congress so that we can get Medicare to fund some of the exercise programs or some of the other programs that are going to be in it. So you need somebody that's got a few financial smarts to start doing grant writing.
Thank you. Very important to think about that economic impact. So I switched our question and moving us along a little bit. This is about sort of what would people do with this Reading Center for Active Living, much of which we've already started to talk about. I think your point about sort of what would bring people in the door is also very important, and I'd be interested in hearing from folks in the room about what would take you to the Reading Center for Active Living?
There is a parallel effort in Reading right now to put in a cultural center. It's been going on for several years. I know Jennifer Hart worked on that for years and years and years. We always get a brick wall. I've been hanging paintings up in rooms for various artists. Before the pandemic, I was moving artists through. We have different artists every few months. It's very well received. So we might consider a cultural aspect to a new facility, which would bring in painting and maybe performances and that sort of thing. I mean, if you're thinking big, we need a cultural center as well as a community center, and that maybe bring people into it.
That's a great idea. Home for the cultural center. What else would bring people into the Reading Center for Active Living?
We always have functions here.
I can't hear her.
Put it a little closer to your mouth.
Various holidays, we have banquets here for various holidays. Of course, COVID has postponed those for more than 2 years, which means we should have a really adequate budget going forward for the seniors, which should not be clawed back by the town. Every dollar should be spent on the present day seniors, because tip top, we sitting here today discussing incentive may not be here by the time it's realized. So spend the money you have accumulated in our budget for our present day seniors. Let's have some banquets, some entertainment, some transportation for the present day seniors.
Good, so yes, so I think the provision of food, whether that's coming to have lunch at the new center or to provide meals in some way, I think that's crucial to the future of this Reading Center of Active Living. But I think your point about what are we gonna do between now and then to continue to ensure that folks have what they need and want is really important point.
I just had this idea that's been playing in my head. We have the library, and it's a very expensive, beautiful library, and they have conference rooms down in the basement, and they're underutilized. And we're in this room dancing, and it's hot, and we're doing things. Why can't, in the interim, just for us aging seniors, why can't they open the library and have activities for seniors there during the day? The kids are in school, nobody's using those conference rooms, they are temperature controlled, so you don't have to have it at 85 degrees. And let us use those, why, I don't know what the town is sitting on those.
Well, I've heard that the library is a very popular place to be and that some of those rooms are often booked. About during the day, I don't know, but I think.
Maybe like in the morning, at 10 o'clock in the morning, who would be using those big rooms?
Right.
So put some classes in them.
Yeah.
Like language classes or whatever people want.
Yes.
I just had a question that I think might be considered for center for living is have it accessible on weekends. Because a lot of seniors and people who are living alone that don't have family around have nothing to do on the weekend. That's the loneliest time for them. And just to make someplace, open so that they can get together. And holidays, right.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point, certainly fills the gap. Yes.
And what might be nice for all ages is, in Medfield, they have a movie night where all the residents take either their children or grandparents, so it would be nice to be able to have a movie night where you can just get together, get to know your neighbors. I mean, a lot of us are grandparents, we love being around younger kids. Maybe there's something that we could do with the younger children. A movie night might be nice, just to get out, you have popcorn, you get to know other people. Because again, this is a huge isolation. Parents tend to be with other parents that have little kids. Seniors tend to want to be with seniors. Quite honestly, I would love to meet other people that are younger, because it's just much more educational and you learn from each other. But what would bring me to a senior center? Anything. I just want to get out of the house. I want to get out of the house. I want to meet other people. It doesn't matter if I might not be interested, but if I go, I might become interested.
Right.
So just open it up and just see what happens.
Well, thank you for that. I think that it highlights an important point that, we've been talking about, there's things for seniors, there's things for kids and families. And what you're highlighting is that there also should be an opportunity for that to blend together and for people to come together, maybe not all the time every day, but to have some programming that's shared, I think is important. And I also think that your point about, just getting out of the house and also that this is going to be an iterative process. Just, what we decide, I think once the building is created, there's sort of infinite possibility in terms of what kinds of programming can take place there, so I appreciate that. Yes.
Real food, not meals on wheels.
Real food, not meals on wheels, okay. We want quality food, got it.
Linfield's not doing food yet.
This is actually a different point, but we have a new diversity and DEI person through the library. I'm wondering, what I'm hearing from people is they're really feeling isolated and left out. So I'm wondering if the new DEI coordinator could be more involved in this process as well, because seniors are often overlooked, and that is part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want to make sure that all voices are heard, no matter what age and no matter what demographic you belong to. So I'm wondering if, the information from here could be shared with the Shine, I can't even say her name.
They're on the Zoom right now.
Oh, excellent.
And they agree.
Thank you.
Where are you? Now what?
Yes, so that, I think that's a really important point, and I agree that we're hearing, some of the undercurrent that we're hearing is this overall desire for people to not feel isolated and to feel connected to community and whatever that looks like for them. One of the questions, and then also the point about the DEI, getting them involved in this work. One of the questions is sort of who works at the Reading Center for Active Living, and what I'm thinking about with this question is sort of, there's an opportunity to not just have elder services at that building, but perhaps there's the veterans or social workers, others folks in the community. And so I'm curious what people's thoughts are about who would be the folks working at the Reading Center for Active Living. Because if we're talking about a community center, it can't just be elder services, right?
I know. You gotta have a nurse. 3 women fell in this room because these floors are hard and they're shiny and they slid and they broke bones. Just this past winter. So you have to have a nurse on staff. The good thing about this center is we called 911 and they were down here in 2 minutes.
Right. Yep, but definitely that public health, the nurse, having them be present and have a presence in the community, I'm getting nods, yes.
How about,
There is a nurse that works here, yes.
how about, how about having an affordable daycare center? In this economy, 2 parents have to work. Daycare centers are outrageous. Have some seniors take care of the little kids.
Get the lawyer, right? Get the lawyers, right?
I know. Yes, I think, right. You got a lot of reaction from the crowd on that one. But I agree with what you're saying, which is that, having parents are working and, having opportunities for even programming. They are.
So 2 parents who have just regular jobs might get a great, benefit from having a more reasonable daycare center. If we're gonna do a community, people have to work.
Yeah. And if not a full center, maybe even just drop-in programs for kids, that can participate, yes.
And on that same note, a respite or drop-in for the elders.
Yes.
We have a lot of people in this town that care for their loved ones.
Yes.
Which is great, really strong people. But, that couple hours or whatever, so, can have the kids here, have all us old folks here, we have the dance group in the middle.
Dance and safety entertainment. Yeah, no, I think that's really important. So respite, some kind of adult day respite program for people who are providing care, absolutely.
Talking about not to be here because, we really have to happen during the day, but probably senior centers aren't really busy usually between 4 and 5:30 or so. So maybe it would be a good time to have maybe some teachers who would be willing to come here and help teach the homework. Because it would be, they could come from around the city, sign up or whatever.
Yep. Another location for some of that kind of educational programming. Yes.
I have to ask this question because we're going, everybody has different ideas, but first of all, what is the point? What are we looking at? A community center or a senior center? And people like go to other senior centers. The other thing, whichever is a decision that's real by the
we have to get from point A to point B. And many of us have cut back or stopped driving. So we still will need van service at some point. So the plan is location and just a simple thing like van service.
Yeah.
So you have to make a decision on just what it is that you want. Do you want senior center or combination?
No, I think it's a combination.
The way it's going now, it's like a combination. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe we could take a vote on it or something.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. No.
I don't know.
Right, a great point. So I think we are the Center for Active Living, the way that Recalc is thinking about it is this sort of senior community center. So a place where the senior center programs and services are provided, but also other things happen there. Yes.
This whole thing is about what people want and need, and we have, what, 100, 120 people here? Getting some good comments. But if there are 7,000 seniors, how do we enable them to make their inputs? And a lot of them don't want to stand up or even write cards. Reading has a history. Back in 2008, we had a very large, what's called a World Cafe, which is held in the field house. And perhaps you don't know, the World Cafe is a way, and there was another one in the library, I think about 5 years ago, a smaller one on University. You get people together to sit around a table with 5 or 6 people, talk to each other. Somebody self-appoints themselves as a facilitator and a note taker, and you rotate tables 3 or 4 or 5 times. Question is how to do that. It's labor intensive. We still got COVID. A lot of this can be done online. I happen to have just finished working with a group, church in town, where we were struggling with some problems. And for 4 weeks, we ran what we ran called conversation tables on Zoom. 5 or 6 people coming together with a list of questions, a note taker, facilitator, and we got a lot of results. Now, we only had about 50 out of 125 people participate, but that's pretty good because you have said, with the survey you're talking about, if you get a 10 to 12% return, 700. So how can you do this? And the question is logistics and cost. But you know, there are neighborhoods and people can gather in neighborhoods. And I remember Jane Burns telling me once, used to be the town's elder administrator, that she knew people in town that really needed help. They wouldn't open the door to talk to them. And how do you access those people? Marilyn Shapley is trying to address this. And there are various ways to do it, and there are techniques to do it, and thanks to COVID, there are lots of different ways to do it, lots of different platforms. But one of the problems is, I don't know how many people, my guess would be out of the 7,000 seniors, probably about 4,000 at least, maybe 5, can use a computer. If they can use a computer, they can go online with Zoom, and if you structure it correctly, and I don't know if you've done this at all at Umass, we've talked about this, that might be one way to do it. And there are resources. Someone mentioned Ready Neighbors Network. It's a small group of people that came together 5 years ago because we wanted a quote-unquote age in place. That's a metaphor for a lot of different things. And in a sense, it's a mini version of what you're talking about here. It's a village organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And that reminds me, we are going to talk a little bit about what comes after today's forum and the other ways that we're going to engage the community. But I think that cafe model that you're talking about is important.
Hi, I just would like to mention a population that perhaps I don't think has been mentioned, but there are a lot of working seniors still, so they can't participate in day programs. So I think it's very important that we talk about evening programs for seniors too.
Evening and weekends, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
Could I just see a show of hands, how many people that hypothetically, a brand new senior center was put up here overnight? How many of you would be all in favor of that happening? Just senior centers, that's great.
No, a new one built somewhere.
Or a new one built somewhere else in And then how many? Yes, come on. And then how many of you, if your taxes were gonna get increased by doing that, would you still want to go ahead and do it?
Taxes are gonna go up no matter what. So they keep going up and up and
That's a lot more taxes coming in. So we look twice a town.
That predates me.
You're right. But I think your point is well taken, which is that there's certainly a demand for this kind of place, but it will come with those additional costs, and we know that the economics of living in Reading is high.
well, I don't get into a fight about that, but
Yes,
economically, we put money into all levels of care in our schools, et cetera, and we're just asking for a fair share of that.
right.
And,
Yes.
you know, so, most of us have been paying taxes all our life.
Yes.
So, you know, it's part of what.
Yes, so yes, I think your point about we pay, our taxes go for all kinds of things for other groups of people, and this is just your
I have
opportunity.
no children and voted for children.
Of course, yeah,
As that gentleman said, if this building was gone,
yes,
number one, this building is a historic site. That
Exactly.
man over there will jump up and yell about it.
yes,
Bill Brown is our favorite person in town,
yes.
okay? He watches out for everything. But is your long-term, what you're working to here, and a woman said on the screen, that you're gonna build a new site someplace? Because you can't get in what we all want to see, can't fit in here.
Yes, so that's a segue into my other question, which is, so where would it go if it's not gonna go here? What's that?
I said, let's get to building it.
Where you gonna put it?
Where, anybody have any ideas where it might go?
I don't know where.
Across the street where Walgreens has been sitting empty for 7
Yes,
years.
Yeah.
But the problem is there's no parking.
So that's an opportunity, we got parking, somebody said it's not big enough, okay, other places,
Move the police station.
Throw them out of town.
other ideas,
There's one down by the train station that's empty.
down by the train station.
With a Rite Aid or something.
It's not big enough and it's not about the parking.
So big enough and parking are things people are.
Up at the town forest, when you go in where the dump is, if you continue down there, there's a huge meadow. That would be a great place.
That's out of the way.
Okay, other ideas? I'm gonna go here and then.
I don't need the mic.
All right, well,
Oh, where the old Gold's Gym was.
Old Gold's Gym.
Plenty of parking.
Oh, yeah.
Ground level, easy to get out.
Down by Market. All right. Property at Bear Hill.
That's good.
Walgreens is bigger, so we've got some Walgreens, we're just getting ideas here. At Walgreens.
I believe it was the property on Oakland Road, which is not developed, brought to the high school. If that could be developed, you have plenty of parking right across the street, and it's a nice location. I don't want an ugly center. The Walgreens building is ugly. It really is.
So you're saying, reminding the things of the road restrictions by the high school, Oakland Road property. Okay.
Before you build a building, you have to know what you're gonna have to put in it. And there are lots of options. The yard, what we bought RMLD, which RMLD is about half empty, by the way. There are a lot of options, but it's a very complex situation.
Right. I think that, it's important, and all of this is incremental in terms of our approach to this. We don't know the answers to sort of square footage and cost and location, all of those things yet. Those are things to be determined. But in order to inform that conversation, I think it's important for us to hear from you all about what you would like. and ideas for where you think it might go and sort of get these ideas on paper so that the committee has information from the community to work with. So that's really what we're here trying to do. So that's what we're wanting to get your ideas. We're not making any decisions today, but this is your opportunity to make your ideas and your thoughts known.
Thank you. Like I said, I've been around running since 1932. You talked about the parking problem. In 1930, Route 28 was done, and in 1931, they complained about the speeding and lack of parking. So you haven't solved it since then. My father told me many, many years ago, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you want a senior center, you're gonna have to pay for it or move out of Redmond. My reservations are made at Laura Hill, so I know where I'm going.
Thank you.
Is there any chance of adding on high school? Is there any chance of adding on, on the parking lot and everything? Or do we have to just leave the building the way it is?
That is not anything goes. So that is certainly a possibility at this time to add on to this building or do something with it.
That can't happen.
But we know it's a historic site that has some issues. Yep.
Today only, anything's possible.
I didn't get.
Yes. Yes. I think it's been pretty determined that this existing building is not meeting the needs of the community. So if this location may work, but this building is not working.
Next to
So
here. So they put a roof in.
I just,
They should
one of the
have.
discussions
But that
on
could have been
location is, does it need to be in the center
But they
of
didn't jump
town?
that.
So that.
Are you part of that
I
committee?
hear people say, oh, it needs to be in the center of town because it's accessible. So
So you know
is that a
about
true
Bill Brown.
statement, or could it be at Oakland Road or?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, so when we talk about,
So didn't he?
it's nice to be downtown, but there's issues with
Amy's
that
fine.
related to parking and walking and things like that. And so I don't think we're limited to the downtown area. I think one of the implications of that is the transportation piece, which I know has been mentioned. So if we are going further outside of
2 years ago.
our town.
He just put him on.
Yeah, transportation no matter what.
I live down near the high school,
In Lynn.
and I walk down there all the
Nephew.
time over the fields and stuff.
He was a kid.
There is so much
Junior.
congestion,
Jeffrey.
because you've got the fields, you've got all the activities, you've got the high school, you've got the middle school, you've got the elementary school. Everybody's picking up at the same time, and then you're gonna put a senior center there too. It's like a madhouse, just. What?
No,
You might want to
wait up
see
the football and
that.
everything.
The hours might.
Football,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything happens.
And the parents and
Yeah, so there's
other
lots of.
towns.
Yeah, yeah.
It just says it's congested.
I think, yeah. So a field at the high school, that, we could certainly put it out there as an option. I think they're pretty limited. I think they have to use those fields. So like, maybe we could just get a show of hands if the resident center for active living was not in the center of town, it was on the outskirts of town, would that keep you, would you still go?
Depending on transportation.
Depending on transportation, okay, great.
I mean, there's no parking, I mean, that's a problem without having a senior, so without having a center.
Yes.
Because one of these people said we could get a better van service in town too.
Yes.
Reimagine everything.
All right,
We can reimagine.
that's bringing me to my conclusion of the conversation today. But if you have other thoughts, remember that you can write them on your note card and we will collect them. And if you have something you absolutely have to say, please raise your hand and we can get you in before we end. But I wanted to just describe to you what's happening after this. Before I do that, Sierra, is there anyone else on Zoom with anything they'd like to contribute? Okay. So I wanted to just give you a sense of what else is happening related to our work in Reading in support of the Recalc Committee. There is another forum tonight at the library for those of you who may have seen the flyers of so we're doing this again this evening at the library, and we will also be back in May to do some additional forums. The idea is we're trying to get, so you all have checked it off your list. You don't have to come back unless you'd like to. But we're trying to hear from as many people as we can. So if you know people, if you have friends, neighbors, family members who are not able to come to today's sessions, either today or this evening, please encourage them to be on the lookout for those May dates so that they can join us again. In addition, we are also convening a number of smaller group discussions, so we're calling those focus groups. Those are gonna be with residents, as well as some stakeholders, some town employees and things like that. Smaller group conversations really digging into some of the issues that were raised today around accessibility, around programming, around location and things like that. And so those will be happening sort of over the summer. We are also working toward a community survey that is being put out after Labor Day in September. So there will be an opportunity for the community to respond to a survey. And again, please stay in touch with what's going on. I know the Recal Committee is trying to continue to get information out about all of that. And you will be hearing from us specifically about how that survey is going to be rolled out. But that is another opportunity for you to put on paper sort of your thoughts and opinions about all of that. And all of this information will be triangulated and analyzed, put together in a nice report and delivered to the town by the end of the year. The idea being that this information will be in support of Recalc as they take their next steps towards feasibility in terms of talking about location, square footage, number of parking spots, some of those harder questions that have to be decided. So I just wanted to make sure you know that this is the beginning of several conversations. Make sure you tell your friends and neighbors to please participate in any of these opportunities. It's your opportunity to really contribute to this process. With that, does anyone have any last burning comments?
Well, has the town actually started looking at any sites before this? Were they waiting for this meeting?
My understanding is there has not been any site discussion to this. They're really trying to understand sort of what's on people's minds. What are
That's understandable. I just was curious.
No, yes.
Since for the next step, we can decide this, is there a way that the senior center can satellite classes, have someone coordinate and say, there's gonna be Zumba at 11 o'clock at the library. There's going to be, I don't know, sewing at 10 o'clock at, you know, could we have somebody coordinate satellites?
I think that's, you know, we talked about, you know, between now and then when this new center opens, there is, you know, people wanting some additional programs and things. And so I think that's a great idea for having sort of some classes around town. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
More questions back here?
I appreciate all the work that's been done, and it looks like it's going to be going on for a long time. I'm just wondering, in the best case scenario, if we found a location other than here, I love this historic building, and nothing should happen to it, but I don't think it fits the bill for a senior center anymore, but I think it could be used for something else. It's beautiful, and I think we should preserve it. However, if we find that space, remember, Reading is only 9 square miles of area. You don't have to go too far anywhere if you're going to the furthest point. So I don't think that needs to be a barrier to say it's gotta be in the center, which is congested anyway. Maybe over at the Reading Municipal Light, the Public Works, there's talk about that. There's talk about Oakland. And I'm saying that we're not gonna get the best case of anything, but we need land. And things can be accommodated. And I agree with Mary Ann, it's busy over there. However, the times that it would be most used by seniors is when the kids are in school during the day, and they shouldn't be buzzing around too much, okay? And also, it's a very walkable for a lot of neighbors to get to it, and it would have excellent parking. So I think that's a great idea to explore. Okay, so we get the land. We know there's gonna be no problem of figuring out what are we gonna have there, because we've got loads of ideas. That can be done, but when is this going to be built? How long? In the best case scenario, with all the studies and everything else, if we're trying to have a vision, let's make it possible. Let's do it instead of keep rehashing the same stuff. We need it, and we need it now. Okay? So really, when do you think the best case scenario for building plans, architects, all that stuff? Let it go, let it get going. When? This is around I love it. And I just think, see, that's what I mean, and I know you know that's right. So I'm trying to say, let's change anything and expedite things. Okay?
Thank you.
It's too bad.
It's a wonderful idea, the way it's designed, way, and I hope I'm not dead before it's built.
Absolutely. So yes, I can tell you there is no time estimate, yet. But this is the first step. We've got a feasibility process, then there'll need to be site selected, then there'll need to be a contractor procured, and then they'll have to do the building. So I think we're talking about at least a few years. Okay, so we have, we're wrapping up, folks. We have one more question from the Zoom folks. If we could just quiet down just for a second so we could give those folks an opportunity to be heard. And then I know Recalc has to adjourn their meeting. So who's on Zoom? Jean. Jean on Zoom?
Yes, it's Jean. Has anyone, or is there any federal or state grants that can be allocated for this?
I certainly think there's a number of strategies for funding these kinds of projects that involve all kinds of funding streams. We're not there yet, but I certainly think that there will be different sort of sources of funds that can be contributed.
Okay, because my thought is, once that is determined, that can possibly expedite this, because again, as I think a lot of them, members here today, this is going to be something that's going to take place in 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
We've been going through this senior center being so congested and activities not taking place for too long now.
Yes. Thank you, Jean. Okay, who's adjourning the Recalc meeting?
John Sasso.
John Sasso.
I am. Can everybody hear me?
Oh, that's what.
I can hear you.
Can I just say a quick thank you to everybody that attended on behalf of the Recalc Committee? We really appreciate we really appreciate everybody's attendance today. We are working on. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, if folks in the room could quiet down just a minute so we can hear from John.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today. The Recalc Committee really appreciates your participation. We are actually working on some more ways to communicate out the status of this project and effort. So please keep your eyes open for that. We do also maintain a website on the town website. If you go to either Elder Services or the Council on Aging, you'll see a link to the Recalc Committee. So with that, I want to just formally, do I hear a motion to adjourn from one of the Recalc members in the room, please?
Yes, we have a motion.
Nora Bucko.
From Nora Bucko.
And second? Second. Okay, so I'm going to ask for your votes. Mark Doxler?
Yes.
Ronasini?
Yes.
Yes.
John Parsons?
I think
he left. He had to step out.
Okay, Nora?
Yes.
And John Sasso, yes. So with that, we'll formally adjourn the Recalc Committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you all for being here and being patient with us. Appreciate all of your input.
I have a side question. I recently retired from 72. But I can only.
Yes, and just as a reminder, if you can sign in on your way out, if you haven't already done so, please leave your note card in your chair. Thank you so much.
Even at the senior center, I could fill in here and there, minimal amounts. I mean, I was only getting off. I should have been getting, the minimal amount, whatever the. If there's any kind of.
That's not the answer, I know.